Good morning, guys. Hope you're doing well. You're having a nice weekend. This is the COT data video for the week beginning the 17th of March 2025. We've seen a big surge on the euro, which you would have seen from last week and the week prior. Now, the idea is ideally is that we have a crossover of the euro FX and the US dollar index. We have, if you're looking to buy the euro USD, ideally we'd have a crossover. And so much as it would tell us that the big fish, the banks and institutions, were more bullish on the euro than they are on the USD. But currently, we're pretty much neck on neck, and we're ticked up slightly higher on the USD, but we've really moved on the euro. Now, looking at that trajectory, that momentum tells me that we're probably going to get the crossover, so it could be bullish for the euro USD. Okay, so obviously, hopefully that should make sense. We had the crossover to the downside. We really fell on the euro USD, and now it looks like we might get a crossover to the upside. So ideally, we'd wait for the crossover, but it might be okay. It might be okay to take a long. You obviously want to check your technical charts and check your fundamentals. The ceasefire in Russia-Ukraine would be bullish euro. Traditionally speaking, fundamentally speaking. Okay, so there's just a setup that I'm looking at, and we may get the crossover next weekend. But of course, you must remember that this COT data is from Tuesday, so we've got a bit of a delay. So now, if we had visibility of this real-time data, we probably would have had the crossover, but we don't have visibility of it until every Friday. All right, so we'll have to wait and see what happens on Friday. And then we're privy to that information, but the banks and the big fish and the institutions all have visibility of what's going on. And I think we probably would have had the crossover, but we'll wait until Friday for the confirmation because we're only allowed to see it at a delay, which is quite annoying, but it is what it is. Okay, so that's the euro USD. Let's look at the yen. Now the yen has been moving very strongly, so I wonder whether or not we need to have a breather, and we have gone slightly sideways. So looking at things in a fundamental view, if we do have a ceasefire in Russia-Ukraine, there may not be too much of a desire for safe havens such as the yen, such as the USD. So we may see some like safe haven demand lessen, where we're going to probably do quite well on risky currencies and less well on the safe haven currencies such as the yen and the USD. It's worth noting that the yen had decoupled away from its risk on, risk off, but it may go back to it again. There's a point where the yen will just do its own thing regardless of risk appetite, but it may be correlating again. And so if we do go risk on, which I think is possible, if you've seen the videos that I've been making over the course of the week, it looks like we're probably going to have a risk on week. If so, and we see the yen move lower, then it's going to tell us that it's going to start correlating with risk appetite again. And so we had that big squeeze. If you remember, we had that compression. We've got this W pattern, and we could probably argue we've made the W pattern. We're just taking a little breather. We may come down to the downside, but we'll still be bullish because we're very strongly above zero, but just slightly less bullish if it comes down. Okay, so it's important to note. Ideally, in an ideal world, something was above zero and then increased, or something was below zero and then they increased, and then that would be like a bullish sign. That would be a bearish sign. Okay, because it's looking at where they are at the net level and whether or not they added to that bias. Okay, so currently you can see up, well, sideways. So up on the euro, up slightly on the USD, just taking a breather on the yen. It has been going pretty rampant. Okay, so let's take euro off, go on Aussie, and sideways, just sideways. I can't even comment on that. It just hasn't done anything at all. It looked like it wanted to move higher, but it just didn't do anything, and it's just gone. Hasn't done anything at all. It just moved. Just slightly moves sideways, and that's it. So I can't show the data, but we can see we're above the zero, but below the zero, and hasn't done anything at all. So it might be waiting for the green light for risk appetite. It's worth noting that they heard are long on the Australian dollar, They're also long on the New Zealand dollar as well. Okay, so it might be worth noting that because the recent sentiment is very powerful, and so it might be that the big fish are waiting for the herd to get crushed, and so they could be waiting for that. I know that these guys are like huge whales, they're big players, but it's just interesting that the herd are really long, and so perhaps they're going to wait for the herd to get crushed first. And once the herd, the small time traders, once they start selling, then they'll pick up the pieces and then we'll see a move higher. So the sideways stuff could be to do with retail sentiment, maybe, but it's hard to say. It could be that. Okay, so that's Aussie off. Pound on. Now we've got a busy week. We've got BOE, we've got BOJ, and we've got the Fed this week. Okay, so we've got to pay attention to those macros. Up higher, we've got the GU buy signal. So there's the British pound, 29,000 versus 16,000. So they are more bullish on the pound than now the USD. So that's of note. That's also moving higher, like the euro. Okay, so that's of note. And don't forget we've got these supports, which I thought might have held, and they did. Okay, pound on, pound off, CAD on. CAD is it's a bit sluggish, isn't it? It didn't really move much at all. Minus 143 to minus 142. So not really doing much. It might be trying to move higher, but it's going to be capped by oil and those fundamentals that I spoke about in last week's video because of the fact that Trump's going to drill oil. So it's going to obviously impact the price of the Canadian dollar because it's a prime export of oil. So if the USD, the United States are sourcing their own oil, there's going to be less demand for the Canadian dollar. So it may just go sideways slightly in negative territory for a while. And it doesn't look that great for CAD. It's going okay, but it's just a bit sluggish. CAD off, gold on. And so that's super interesting because we've hit an all-time high at 3,000, but yet the COT data is we're moving low. Right, so I know I said this was delayed from Tuesday, so we should, in fact, this is a bit bogus. This will tick higher. When we come to next weekend COT data, this will be moving higher because we hit an all-time high on the spot on gold spot price, so 3,000. So that doesn't make any sense. This might have even been a ruse, maybe, just to get the crowd to sell. And so all a little bit naughty. So I think by next weekend, this will be doing that. Okay, so very tricky. Okay, and gold off, New Zealand dollar on, and just hasn't done much, has it? Minus 55 to minus 52. We've broken this horrible chop. See the orange line? Broken below it, and we're just going sideways. And it's hard to say what's going to happen, because the herd are so long on the New Zealand dollar and also long on the Aussie. It may just be going sideways until they get wiped out. Once the retail herd get wiped out, then we can rally. So if you look at their exposure on the pound New Zealand dollar, the euro New Zealand dollar, the pound Australian dollar, the euro Australian dollar, they're very, very extreme. Okay, and then we'll take off New Zealand dollar, and then we'll look at the Swiss franc, and that'll be it. And we're just sideways. I don't think anything's going to change much on the Swiss franc, but it looks like we're just going to be range bound. And even if we do break the range, we may just hover sideways and then perhaps maybe even go back in the range. So there's the COT data video. Just worth noting on the open interest, we saw an absolutely massive reduction on the Euro USD, and these would be stops getting raided because the herd were very bearish on the USD and we've really pumped. So this is them exiting with losses. Some of them are exiting with profits, but we know by looking at the sentiment, they are they're very short. So that tells us this is them getting out of losses. So quite painful week for the retail herd, but it is what it is. But at least they got out. The fact that they exited en masse in a very strong way can indicate the sentiment shifting. So we may struggle a little bit on the Euro USD. We'll have to wait and see. Fundamentally, on a macro level, we should do fine because of the Russia-Ukraine thing. Probably seeing a big exodus of retail positions, and that movement will shift the bias. Okay, because obviously if we come up and take stops, we've hit liquidity, and we can have a reversal potentially. Okay, so just be careful this week. See how we do on the USD. I'm going to reset the data now, and I wish you a good weekend, and I'll speak to you soon.